my name's Julia and I'm from Upcycle Fashion, and I wanted to talk to you today about how to make t-shirt yarn. I run Upcycle Fashion and I deliver workshops and talks around sustainable fashion and about textile waste, about reuse, upcycling and repairing, so that what we own in our wardrobes for our clothing can stay in our lives for as long as possible. The activity that I'm going to do today and I want to share with you is how to turn a t-shirt into a ball of yarn. And these are some balls I made earlier from different types of t-shirts in different colours, and that's the great thing about t-shirt yarn, is that you can make it in as many different colours as there are t-shirts, which is just an infinite amount of colours and textures. So the reason that I think t-shirt yarn is so fantastic is because it works in the same way as any other chunky woolen or acrylic yarn. And if you've got a pair of chunky needles, you can knit with it just as you would a chunky yarn, but you don't have to knit with it. You can also plait it and twist it and knot it. So these are some examples of plaited yarn, which are fantastic to make into items of jewellery. This is a necklace here. So this is a great one if you've got children at home or if you're just looking for an activity. We've got these bands, so just by plaiting and tying these balls of t-shirt yarn together, you can make new objects. If you are a knitter and can go a bit further with the yarn, then you can knit up some baskets. I've just made a few here to give you some examples. And this is, I didn't knit the cactus, my friend knit the cactus, but I'm using it for decorative purposes for a knitted plant pot as well. So these are just some of the uses for t-shirt yarn. Now it's a simple process. All you need are some scissors and a spare t-shirt. In this time of us all being in isolation, it's a great activity because hopefully everybody has an old t-shirt knocking around at the back of their wardrobe. Hopefully everybody has a pair of scissors. I'm using fabric scissors, but you don't have to use fabric scissors, just kitchen scissors will do. And when we come into the technique, I'll tell you how to change it slightly if you are just using kitchen scissors that are normally not as sharp as fabric scissors. And it's also an interesting time to use what we already have. With the shops being closed, it might not be easy for you to go out and buy knitted or woolen or acrylic yarns. So it's a good opportunity to use what we have to make raw materials and use some skills to make some new items that will hopefully can be worn or can be used around the home or even given as gifts to loved ones at this tricky time. I'll talk you through this process of turning a t-shirt into a ball of yarn. So first of all, you'll need to get your scissors and lay the t-shirt out flat as you can on a hard surface, ideally in front of you. I am going to show you with my camera here. This is mine. So I've got the sleeves and the collar at this end, just making sure that's as flat as possible. There. Okay. So then you're going to take your scissors and you're just going to cut across the sleeves. So basically cut the sleeves and the collar off. I'm just going to start and then I will get halfway and bring you back in here so you can see. So from this point here under the sleeve to this point here, and I'm just going to cut straight across. So I'll leave you down just while I finish that. Right there. Okay. Now, there are tutorials and ways to use this as t-shirt yarn, but as I really wanted this workshop to be a beginner's guide to t-shirt yarn. I'm not going to do anything with this at the time being. So if you're a slightly more advanced level and you feel like you have the skills to turn that into more yarn, then go for it. If at this stage you just want to get the easy option, that's absolutely fine. Just continue following what I'm about to do and keep this on your stockpile for more workshops, which I'm sure we all have. Then what we are left with now is the bottom part of the t-shirt. We're going to cut off this bottom hem just because it's really quite thick, and when it comes to using the yarn it won't curl like the rest of the fabric will do because it's a bit too thick. So again, we're just going to cut that off. So I've laid it flat down on the table here, again as flat as possible. It just helps you get a really neat finish. And then with the scissors we're going to cut into it, and I like to just cut this single layered all the way off. Okay, so I'll bring you back up just while I finish doing a bit of this. And again, the hems that you cut off the t-shirts are really worth keeping because they are not going to fray. They are a seam, they are the hem of the t-shirt so that they are overlocked securely. They're not going to fray. And actually I like to keep them and use them for ribbons for gift wrapping, for headbands for my daughter to play with. They're just really good bits of fabric to keep hold of. So again, let me bring you down here. So I've cut that. Okay, and you can see, yeah, that it makes, that's one whole continuous stretch, or even do a cat's cradle if you can remember how to do that. So we have now our flat piece of fabric. Now at the beginning of this online workshop, I mentioned that if you didn't have fabric scissors, then just normal kitchen scissors would do. So if you've got kitchen scissors that are probably going to be not as sharp as fabric scissors, you're going to keep this flat on the table. But if you've got fabric scissors that can take a bit more fabric, a bit sharper to cut through, then you can fold, just so you get it done a bit quicker. Not exactly in half, you're going to leave a gap here of about 5 centimetres or 2 inches approximately. So again, so here you've got your fold and your gap and your fabric scissors, and we're going to cut from this fold all the way up over the first fold and then stop. Okay. Now, if you're using the kitchen scissors that aren't going to be as sharp, just go through this single layered. So keep it flat and start at one end and cut, but don't go through that seam. Okay. So because I've got my fabric scissors, I'm going to fold here, leave a gap. And again, really try and keep it as flat as possible, just all the time. Jersey will roll up like crazy, as you'll know if you've ever tried to stitch it on a normal domestic sewing machine. So as you're working it, keep it flat. So I'm going to turn my end here to you. This is that 5 centimetre gap. And I'm going to start at the folded seam and just cut all the way up. Go over that first fold and then stop. Okay, and you want these to be around 1 to 2 centimetres thick, these strips. I'm going to go over that first seam and then stop. So it's folded over just to be quicker, really. If you are working with your slightly more blunt scissors, start at this end and just cut it all the way up. The only difference is it just takes longer. You don't have to be too precious about it. If you are the kind of person, a lot of the time in workshops, people really like to measure out their 1 centimetre or 1.5 centimetre strips. If it's your personality to measure with a ruler, then absolutely go for it. You can just mark it out at equal intervals across the fabric, but you really don't have to. It's quite forgiving. So as long as you're happy to do it by eye, then that will be absolutely fine. I'll bring you back down here and just show you as I go. Hopefully you're using a t-shirt that you have absolutely no use for. Might be a bit damaged or stained. You might have grown out of it. I use t-shirts a lot in my workshops, and especially with t-shirt yarn, because they're not particularly gender specific. And also we have a ridiculous amount of wasted t-shirts. I'll just bring you up to talk about the insane volume of t-shirts that we have. I don't know if anybody saw the ITV news segment that was on in February earlier this year, and they did a profile of textile waste that was exported to Ghana. I'm not going to talk too much about second-hand economies for textiles, but the amount of single-use t-shirts that do end up in the textile waste stream, wherever in the world that may be, they are absolutely overrun with t-shirts. That might be gig t-shirts, festival t-shirts, event t-shirts, specific t-shirts for new movie releases, hen do's, stag do's, you name it. I'm sure you'll have had a t-shirt made for it. And this sort of single-use mentality towards clothing is really damaging anyway, environmentally. But t-shirts seem to specifically keep coming back into this debate and this conversation around textile waste. The government, through a campaign called WRAP, did some research recently, well, over the last few years, and they've said that the average lifespan of a garment is only 3.3 years, with a t-shirt being just under that at 2.7 years. So anything that we can do and any skills we can use to keep these garments and these textile products in use for as long as possible is helping our environment. Now, I know this is one less t-shirt that you're going to wear, but it's one less t-shirt that is going either into landfill or incineration or to charity sector. So I'm going to put this down here. And don't get me wrong, charity shops are a good thing, but a lot of the time these t-shirts end up on the £1 sale rails or going to rag. And hands up if you've ever bought a t-shirt from a charity shop. So what we're going to do is open out here. So I've cut all my strips all the way along, keeping that one seam intact. So when we fold them out, and they're all still going to be connected by this seam here. So I'm just going to bring you back up again here. And this is what you should have. Okay. So the next step is the trickiest part. And what you're going to do is even out. So through, put your hand through here and just make sure that that is all, they are still connected through that one seam. And we're going to start at the bottom. Now, this is a technique that we use in order to get one long continuous length of jersey yarn. It avoids having to knot it every sort of 20 centimeters or so. And the trick is to actually cut it on the diagonal. So I'm just going to bring you down here so I can show you in my hands. So I do find it easiest to lie it on my hands. If it's on the table, it's a bit risky that you're going to cut into it and catch accidentally some of the other parts, even if you lie it flat. So I like to get my hand in there just as a guide, so I know that I'm only working with one layer of fabric. And if my hands in these close-ups look really dry, it's because we're washing our hands about 100 times a day. So I'm sorry if my dry skin, but I'm sure you all feel the same pain with the dry hands. So we've got our scissors here. So I'm going to start at the base and just go into that first cut here, which gets the ball rolling, and that's our first length. And that basically sets the pattern for going for the rest of the yarn. So that set us off on that diagonal that we're going to cut through the whole strip. So picking up that edge to the diagonal, and as you do it, you can move it out of the way. So cut it. So you're going to go into that one, you're going to go up into the next seam. Okay. So this is a good, yeah, as soon as you'll do a few cuts and then you will know that you're on the right track. If you feel better, again, if this is your first time making it and you want to check what you're doing is actually working, you can just quickly drop it down, make sure that you've got them all, that it is all connected, that you're on the diagonal, that you are on that right track, and then you can pick it up again. So just find wherever your seam is, find that one seam where they are all still connected, and then just pop it back on your hand and go up through the rest of the t-shirt here. So cutting all the way through. When you are cutting on the diagonal, try and keep the same width of yarn, that 1 to 2 centimeters, whatever it is that you want, that's fine. Just keep it consistent throughout the whole piece. If you've struggled with any of the stages or any of the steps so far, I'll put some photos and some instructions at the end so you can just clarify and just make sure. Now, when you do get to the very end, instead of cutting through, you won't have a diagonal through, so what I just did then, which I didn't film, is cut straight off the edge. Let me find that edge. Where's that gone? Ah, that's a thin. Yeah. Okay. So cut straight off into that triangle. I can neaten that up a little bit. And then this is your yarn. Now, we've got one more step to go because, as you can probably see, it doesn't quite look like my ball I made earlier. And that's because we now have to curl it and roll it into a ball. Jersey, by its nature, is a knitted fabric. It's a stretchy fabric. It won't fray. It should curl, and most oftentimes it does curl. So, for example, let me find you a flat piece like this. So this is how we've cut it, and then all you need to do is pull it, and it will, of its own accord, I don't know if you can see there, curl up. Be careful when you get to the seams for pulling it. If it's a slightly lower quality t-shirt and you pull the seams, they can just completely tear apart. So give it a bit of a strength. Be careful when you get to the seams, but you can pull it a bit more. So 80% of the time, the t-shirts that I work with in workshops when I run this activity will curl up beautifully like this. However, if you have used a ribbed jersey, so sometimes they are ribbed vest tops and they've got an undulating knitted texture, they will not roll. And I've got an example of that here. So again, I'll hold this up to the camera so you can see. You see that ribbed texture, and as much as I pull that, it stays pretty flat. it gets itself a bit plaited and a bit knotted up. So that won't roll. So just be aware that if you are working with a ribbed fabric, it will stay quite flat and it won't curl up, which is, you can still use it. It's absolutely fine. And in fact, if you're wanting to make a product that does have a bit more texture to it, then that's great. And the basket that I knitted here, I'll take the cactus out. My friend, amazing knitter, knit that. But again, that's a basket that's been knitted from a ribbed yarn. You can see it's just got a bit more texture to it compared to one that's been made from a curled yarn, which has a bit more of a definition of the knit there. So this one is curling up nicely. Most t-shirts will curl up nicely like this. Sometimes I'm surprised in workshops which ones are ribbed, because they don't always look it outwardly. And then only when it gets to this part of the workshop, oh, I've got to the end there, that the workshop attendees are sometimes a little bit disappointed that their yarn hasn't curled up into a nice ball of it. And as you are rolling this and curling this yarn, you'll see actually how much just one t-shirt, that wasn't a particularly large t-shirt, I think it was a man's medium, it actually makes quite a lot of yarn. So you can easily knit one of these baskets out of one t-shirt. If you're wanting to do a slightly larger project, so this cushion actually that's behind me here, this took a few, this is a knitted cushion cover, and this took probably closer to about 4 or 5 balls of yarn just to get that, and then just put some buttons on it. This is just one long rectangle that I knitted, then turned it into the envelope cushion. It's overlapped a little bit there on the front, right there, just like that. So you can use the chunky yarn just as you would for knitting or crochet, but if you're not a knitter or a crocheter, then just plaiting it or choosing some complementary colours. A lot of the time, if you've got t-shirts in your own wardrobes that you're no longer wearing, or if you've raided that pound rail at the charity shop for some t-shirts, if you try and choose them in complementary colours, so I've got just some examples here, so a grey and a white and a dark navy, you can be really creative with the objects that you make with them. So now that this is curled up, this is all curled up of its own accord, all I've done is just stretch it. We need to roll it into a ball. There's a few different ways you can do this, but the way that I like to do it is just to get started, just to use my hand. I'm right-handed, so I naturally go for my right hand, but wrap it round a few times just to get enough of a core. Take it off, and then you're gonna turn it the opposite angle, so keep turning it a 90-degree angle for a little bit, and then turn it back at a 90-degree angle, wrap it round again, and when you've maybe done that 4 times, you can rotate and wrap at the same time, so then you just start to get it into a ball shape like this, and then you can just grow it. And this one's actually really nice because it's got a bit of a fleckle to it. You see on there? It's got a sort of dark blue and a light blue. So this will just all roll up. As you are doing it, little bits of fibres will come off right from the very beginning, right from the cutting stage. So if you are doing it, just be aware that you might have to clear up a bit or get the vac out afterwards, because it makes a little bit of a mess, but nothing too horrific. And in t-shirt, good old t-shirt style, t-shirt yarn style, it'll get all tangled up. I've kept it quite loose because I really wanted to show you actually how much is made. You could be a bit tidier when you're doing it yourself, but I wanted to show you the messiness of it all. But now it's just all got really tangled together. But it just makes testament to actually how much it makes. This technique is I obviously used on t-shirts in workshops that I run. I've run them for woven, and there's loads of tutorials online. It's great to use for a t-shirt, but you can use it with any stretch jersey garment. So if you've got a stretch jersey maxi dress, if you've got a stretch jersey miniskirt, it even works on leggings and tights as well. So anything that's stretch jersey that will roll, not fray, you can use the same technique. So there we go. That's my ball of t-shirt yarn. I've managed to get some hair in there as well, as standard. And just to demonstrate as well, these are some of my daughter's tights for school. Now she's not in school, she's outgrown them within 3 weeks. And these are ones that I've just cut up. So these are some of her roll-out tights that made a ball of white yarn, but also I've kept this grey one intact just to show you. So that's same on a much smaller scale, is that same cutting. Again, keep it like 1 to 2 centimeters for each section. And then just like we've done on the t-shirts there, put it in your hand and just follow through on the diagonal. So here, so I'm going to cut, I've already started on the diagonal here, so I'm just going to keep going. There's some grey winter tights that got horrendously bobbly. Again, it's flat, but just give it a pull and it will curl up. And then that's tights yarn. In that dark grey actually looks really nice with this navy. So that is how you make a ball of yarn from a t-shirt. I would love to see your products that you make with your t-shirt yarn. Hopefully I've given you a bit of inspiration, whether it's plaiting it with some complementary colours. That's quite a nice combination. To knitting with it. There's so many knitting patterns online. If you want my knitted basket pattern, I can make that available online as well. I am Julia from Upcycle Fashion, and thank you for joining me today.